Coming up in our newscast tonight. A prominent South Korean politician commits suicide amidst allegations of accepting illegal political funds. He leaves behind a note seeking the public support for his party. During his weekly cabinet meeting, President Mnuchin announces plans to create a secretary in charge of self-employed affairs, a move designed to lend a more attentive ear to smaller businesses that may be affected by the wage hike. Finance ministers of G20 nations met over the weekend. They agree on the need for improved communication and coordination to address issues like trade tensions. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Cha. A respected opposition lawmaker took his own life this morning. There were allegations that he accepted illegal funding. In an apparent suicide note, Roh Hoe-chan wrote that he did accept money, but it had nothing to do with any illicit political favors. He may have chosen this path for various reasons, including clearing his party's reputation. Kim Min-ji has our top story.
Roh Hoe-chan, a three-term lawmaker with the minor opposition Justice Party who was marred in a bribery scandal, jumped to his death on Monday. His body was found near an apartment building where his mother and brother live at around 9:40 in the morning. Police later found his jacket in a stairwell, and inside were his wallet and 3 suicide notes. Roh's death has sent a shock through Korean politics, especially given his clean image. He was an icon of the labor movement and of progressive politics, and was also popular for his pithy remarks. His image was tainted, however, by allegations that he received illegal political funds worth over $44,000 from a group led by a blogger known as Drew King. The lawmaker had denied the allegations and said he would respond to questioning sincerely if summoned. 2 of the suicide notes were to his family and have not been released. In the note for his party, though, he said he had accepted funds worth some $35,000 in total on 2 occasions in 2016, but claimed there were no special favors or any promises in return. A party spokesperson read out the note in which Roh said he had been foolish for not going through the official procedures for receiving political contributions.
Who can I blame? It was a foolish decision and a shameful error in judgment. I must take responsibility for it. Although my time ends here, I hope the party will go on with confidence. I apologize to the Korean people. It's all my fault, so please allow me to accept this punishment, and please continue to support the Justice Party.
The bribery allegations were brought to light amid an investigation into the blogger Drew King, who is on trial for allegedly using hacking software to manipulate online comments on political news articles, to sway public opinion, and win personal favors. It was found that money had been transferred to Roh from accounts linked to the blogger. The case is currently being looked at by a special prosecutor team following a police investigation. The Justice Party said it regrets that the probe has led to such devastating consequences when its original point was not Roh's finances but the manipulation scheme. The independent counsel leading the probe, Ho-ik-bum, expressed sorrow in a televised briefing and sent words of condolences to the lawmaker and his family. Roh's funeral will take place on Friday. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Even during the weekly meeting between the nation's leader and top aides, officials mourned the passing of the former labor activist. According to our Cha Sang-mi, the president had nothing but praise for the man who helped keep the government in check from the opposite side of the political aisle.
Following the sudden death of Roh Hoe-chan, a prominent opposition lawmaker who committed suicide earlier on Monday, Seoul's top office sent its condolences to the deceased. President Moon shared the news with his top aides just before he sat down for a weekly meeting.
Roh Hoe-chan 의원의 사망 소식에 정말 가슴이 아프고 비통한 그런 심정입니다. 노 호-찬 의원은 당을 함께 하지는 않았지만 같은 시대의 정치를 하면서 우리 한국 사회를 보다 더 진보적인 그런 사회로 만들기 위해서 함께 노력을 해봤습니다.
President Moon praised the late lawmaker's career, saying No had made big contributions to widen the political arena and played a large role in improving the dignity of political discussions with his calm words. The South Korean leader sent condolences to the late lawmaker and his family, as well as to the Justice Party, which No was a member of. The meeting came after the Blue House spokesperson told the press that the presidential office decided to cancel President Moon's Q&A session on Facebook Live, which had been scheduled for just before noon, following the sorrowful incident in the morning. The presidential Blue House sent a notification on Twitter that the planned reply session to a petition had been delayed, and it will be led by the president's senior communications secretary Yoon Young-chan instead on Tuesday. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
The South Korean leader vowed to put extra emphasis on handling issues related to the self-employed and small businesses. He is also seeking to take charge in carrying on regulatory reform. Moon Geon-young zooms in on the plans to revitalize the economy in the second half of the year.
Active communication with various players of the economy is one measure South Korean President Moon Jae-in will adopt to revitalize the economy, thereby leading sustainable growth. Speaking at a weekly meeting of his top aides on Monday, President Moon said if necessary, the president himself will meet with representatives from the enterprises, small businesses, self-employed, and the labor sector to sufficiently listen to their views, explain what needs to be explained, and ask for what needs to be requested. The government will take the lead in social dialogue to promote economic vitality.
특별히 하반기 경제정책에서 자영업 문제를 강조하고 싶습니다. 그런 취지에서 청와대에 자영업 담당 비서관실을 신설하고 직접 현장 목소리를 듣겠습니다.
Pointing out that the self-employed had been considered as part of small and medium-sized enterprises in Asia's fourth largest economy, the South Korean president said they should be regarded as an independent industry and pledged to come up with measures to support the sector in areas such as high rent prices and unfair franchise practices. The South Korean president also vowed to focus on drastic regulatory reform and acceleration of innovative growth by chairing a monthly regulatory reform meeting.
이를 통해 우리 경제의 역동성과 성장 잠재력을 제고하고자 합니다. 소득 주도 성장과 혁신 성장, 공정 경제는 함께 병행되어야 하는 것이지 선택의 문제가 아니라는 것을 다시 한번 강조합니다.
Moon Geon-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
G20 finance chiefs wrapped up their two-day meeting in Argentina. They agreed on the need to prevent trade tensions from hurting the global economy. Seoul's representative called for more international cooperation to mitigate risk from Washington and Beijing's tariff tit-for-tat. Ko Dun-hee has the highlights from that session.
The recent trade tensions were the main talking point at the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting last weekend in Buenos Aires, Argentina. The final communique stated that global trade and investment are crucial engines of economic growth, productivity, and job creation. It also pointed out that although the global economy remains strong, downside risks such as heightened trade and geopolitical tensions exist. The representatives promised more dialogue and action to mitigate such risks and boost confidence. The statement's tone was stronger than the previous statement released last March, which only mentioned the need for further dialogue. South Korea's Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon emphasized the importance of international cooperation to alleviate the impact of the trade war, especially when many countries are facing problems like high government debt. Kim added that developing nations are more vulnerable to trade wars and said each country should think about how their economic policies can affect others. The IMF also warned economic leaders about the consequences of increased trade tariffs.
It certainly indicates the impact that it would have on GDP, which in the worst-case scenario, under current measures and not taking into account most recent announcement, is in the range of 0.5% of GDP on a global basis.
Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said at a news conference on Sunday that he understands what the trade issues are and that the U.S. is trying to deal with them productively. He said that the U.S. had proposed that the G7 drop trade barriers between them, and that the other G7 members are taking the U.S. proposal seriously. The original proposal was made by President Trump last June, when he proposed the elimination of tariffs in talks at the G7 summit in Canada.
People are trying to make this about the United States and protectionism. That's not the case at all. This is about the United States wanting free and fair trade.
The weekend talks in Argentina come during an escalating trade conflict between the United States and China, which have so far imposed tariffs on $34 billion worth of each other's goods. 고륜이 아리랑 뉴스.
The next phase for the two superpowers following the tariff conflict could be a currency war, which is why America's Treasury Secretary has vowed to closely monitor the rapidly weakening yuan for signs of manipulation. Choi Si-young has the details.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin said last Friday in an interview with CNBC that he is closely monitoring the weakening Chinese currency, which President Trump has said China is manipulating. He also said he will review whether to designate China as a currency manipulator. The Chinese media responded Monday. The Global Times, China's state-run media, quoted a number of pro-government pundits who said China is not manipulating its currency, and it claimed China is doing everything according to market standards. Experts say there's no sign of the Chinese government intervening directly, but that it may be allowing the yuan to depreciate gradually because that makes the country's exports cheaper. Economists at J.P. Morgan support that view, noting that China has traditionally responded to trade disputes by letting the yuan depreciate. According to Bank of America's Wealth Management Division Merrill Lynch, a weakening Chinese currency lowers the purchasing power of Chinese importers, and in the long run, stimulates capital outflow. Robin Brooks, chief economist at the Institute of International Finance, warned that in light of the 2015 yuan depreciation crisis, a weakened yuan will likely lead to a plunge in oil prices. He also said that currencies of countries that export raw materials like Colombia, Russia, and Malaysia are likely to tumble first, followed by other countries in Asia. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
China's Commerce Ministry will start an anti-dumping investigation into steel products imported from South Korea, Japan, the European Union, and Indonesia. Beijing will look into stainless steel billets or bars as well as hot-rolled plates from the four countries. The probe is at the request of a Chinese steel firm, which claims such products accounted for more than half of the domestic market from the year 2014 to 2017. The ministry plans to carry out surveys, check samples, hold public hearings, and conduct on-site inspections to determine if the imports truly are hurting the local industry. For weeks, Donald Trump emphasized that talks over North Korea's denuclearization are on the right track. Now it's looking like his patience is wearing thin. Reportedly, there's frustration over the pace of discussions and growing doubts over Pyongyang's sincerity to follow through on its promise. For the full story, let's turn to our Lee Ji-won.
U.S. President Donald Trump has privately fumed at his aides over the lack of tangible progress being made on North Korea's denuclearization. This is according to the Washington Post on Sunday that cited half a dozen White House and State Department aides. The report says President Trump has requested daily status updates on talks with North Korea and is eager to see the implementation of the next steps to dismantle Pyongyang's nuclear program. This comes, the Washington Post said, as North Korean officials canceled follow-up meetings with U.S. representatives at Panmunjom 2 weeks ago, allegedly demanded more money, and failed to maintain even basic communications. In fact, there has been no significant progress made on talks with North Korea, despite Trump's touting of his summit with the regime's leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore last month. President Trump has repeatedly and publicly said his aides had good talks with North Korea and that Pyongyang promised to abandon its nuclear weapons. And although the North destroyed its Punggye nuclear test site in June and promised to return the remains of American troops killed in the Korean War in the next few weeks, the Washington Post says the missile engine testing facility that Trump said would be destroyed remains intact, and sources say Pyongyang is working to conceal key aspects of its nuclear program. Amid the lack of immediate progress, hardliners on North Korea have started to question North Korea's sincerity. Speaking to CBS News on Sunday, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham warned President Trump that he is being played by Kim. He said North Korea is playing the same game it did with former U.S. presidents, and that President Trump has to make sure North Korea and its closest ally China, which has started to pull back according to Graham, need to know that Trump is different from previous U.S. presidents. Graham said this should be done by giving a real stern warning to North Korea through restarting the halted joint military exercises with South Korea and setting deadlines on the North's return of America's fallen Korean War heroes. 이지원, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Pyongyang questions Seoul's commitment to declaring a formal end to the Korean War. On Monday, the regime's two external propaganda websites, 우리 민족끼리 and 메아리, claimed Washington, while refusing to work on ending the war, is making unilateral denuclearization demands. That the U.S. has this attitude because South Korea is not being proactive enough. The website stressed ending the war is an important point stipulated in the April summit agreement and therefore can't be delayed any further. The South's government responded by saying Seoul still aims to get it done within this year and will work with Pyongyang and Washington to achieve that goal. The nation's top diplomat and her German counterpart are set to launch their inaugural strategic dialogue later this week. Berlin's Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs is making his first trip to Asia since coming into office in March. He will first travel to Japan on Wednesday, then fly to South Korea on the same day for a two-day visit. The maiden meeting between Kang Kyung-hwa and Heiko Maas is scheduled to take place on Thursday. This comes as the two countries agreed to establish the strategic dialogue when President Moon Jae-in visited Germany last July. The ministers will discuss a wide range of bilateral, regional, and global issues with a special focus on the latest North Korea developments and efforts to denuclearize the peninsula. Earlier today, a joint funeral was held for the 5 Marines killed during a helicopter crash last week. President Moon Jae-in expressed deep sorrow over the loss, vowing to leave no stone unturned to find out the cause of the accident and prevent such tragedies from ever happening again. Park Ji-won shares with us his remarks.
A joint funeral for 5 Marines who died in a helicopter accident last week was held on Monday in the southeastern city of Pohang. Some 1,000 people were present at the ceremony, including the bereaved family members of the victims, the nation's defense minister Song Young-moo, the chief of naval operations Admiral Shim Seung-sup, and members of the public. The accident happened when a MUH-1 Marine on chopper crashed during a test flight following a maintenance checkup. 5 of the 6 people on board lost their lives, while the remaining survivor remains hospitalized after being seriously injured. A memorial is set to be constructed in their honor, and the Defense Ministry and the ROK Marine Corps have announced that the fallen soldiers have been promoted in rank posthumously. The President's office of Cheongwade, prior a weekly meeting, held a moment of silence for the fallen troops.
As the funeral of the Marines killed at the helicopter crash was held in the morning, let's pay a silent tribute to them before we start the meeting.
President Moon Jae-in expressed his condolences and sorrow over the deaths of the 5 Marines.
영들식에 우리가 함께하지는 못했지만 참으로 비통한 심정입니다. 다시 한번 깊은 애도의 말씀을 드리고 또 유족들에게도 아주 심심한 위로 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다.
A joint investigation committee has been launched following the incident, with the government, military, and civic experts together to find out the exact cause of the accident and prevent similar tragedies from happening again. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The nation's defense and justice ministries are teaming up to look into the snowballing scandal of a military intel unit's attempt to interfere in domestic politics during the Park Geun-hye administration. Through a joint statement, the respective ministers explained the decision to step up the probe into the Defense Security Command was made in response to the public's mounting suspicions about the matter. They add, while military prosecutors are already looking into the case, a joint probe is necessary as many of the key figures involved in the case are civilians that needs to be investigated by civilian prosecutors. This comes after the release of secret documents drawn up early last year, which outline a contingency plan of declaring martial law in case the Constitutional Court doesn't uphold the parliament's impeachment vote against the disgraced leader. For decades, the demilitarized zone has separated the two Koreas along the 38th parallel. Thanks to improving relations between the North and South, the area is gaining greater attention as a tourist hotspot. Kim Hye-sung dropped by the DMZ Museum where you can learn its history.
Established in 1953, the demilitarized zone runs across the entire length of the Korean peninsula. The 248-kilometer belt that separates the two Koreas has long been an all-too-real symbol of war and division. But just 10 kilometers from the heavily armed border in Gosong County stands the DMZ Museum. Here you can find all kinds of historical records and artwork related to the DMZ, from the outbreak of the Korean War and the signing of the Korean War Armistice Agreement in 1953 to landmines and propaganda leaflets exchanged between the two Koreas over the past several decades.
There's also a section showing the records of the fallen soldiers from the Korean War, the family pictures they kept with them, and their unsent letters.
The generation before me experienced the Korean War firsthand. I never did, and it's even harder for my kids' generation to grasp the meaning of the war. With the recent thaw in inter-Korean relations, I wanted to bring my children here and help them understand the history and pain of a divided nation.
The museum says the number of Korean and foreign visitors has jumped 50% between May and June compared to the same period last year, following the Inter-Korean Summit and the North Korea-US Summit in Singapore.
Like the Berlin Wall, which was a product of the Cold War, the DMZ is a legacy of the Korean War. It's of the past, but it exists in the present, and in a way it also extends to the future as its meaning evolves. We hope to capture that change and meaning as the DMZ garners even more attention as a magnet for tourists.
That different meaning can be seen by the flourishing wildlife in the DMZ, which has been a human-free haven and is estimated to be home to over 5,000 different animal and plant species. Pictures of previous inter-Korean business projects like railways that once crossed the DMZ connecting the two Koreas show the possibility of closer economic ties. But there is even more to the museum than that. On the second floor stands trees decorated by visitors themselves, a special touch presenting their hopes on the future role of the DMZ. From teenagers to 92-year-old Mr. Liu, who fought in the Korean War, details differ. But broadly, there is renewed hope for peace and a fresh start. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Lives were lost due to heat-related illnesses in various corners of Korea. The killer scorcher continues this week. Today is considered the hottest time of the year according to the lunar calendar. Our Park Hye-jun fills us in on how this summer's heat is like nothing the country's experienced since modern records were first kept.
Koreans started their work week Monday in record-breaking heat. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, the morning lows in Gangneung on the East Coast hit 31 degrees Celsius. That's the hottest morning since the agency was founded more than a century ago in 1907. It's also only the second time that the lows have been above 30 degrees. The first was in August 2013, when the mercury topped 30.9 degrees in the same region. Heatwave alerts were issued for almost the whole country, with highs in the mid-30s or even higher. Daegu was the hottest at 37.6 degrees, while Seoul and Gwangju saw highs of around 36 degrees. The heat has already killed 11 people this summer, the first time a heatwave death toll has reached double digits. Around 1,050 people are also reported to have been treated for heat-related illnesses, which, according to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is up 60% from the same period last year. The center advises people to refrain from outdoor activities in the hottest time of the day, between noon and 5 p.m., and also to stay hydrated and cool, especially those 50 or older who are most vulnerable to the heat. The severe heat has also led to a huge increase in power usage. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy reported that between 4 and 5 p.m., power demand reached 90.7 million kilowatts, surpassing the previous record of 88.2 million kilowatts set this February. That drained reserve power down to only 7.6 million kilowatts, only 8.4% of capacity. It's the first time this year that backup power has dropped to the single digits.
The weather agency says we should probably brace ourselves for the next couple of weeks, as a heat wave is forecast to continue until next month. Park Hye-jun, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Buck at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, any signs of relief from this unbearable heat?
Unfortunately, no, Daniel. Now, tomorrow will be similar or even hotter than today, with the humidex values reaching nearly 40 degrees Celsius across the whole country. But Beijing is in luck with rain in the forecast to bring down some highs tomorrow. Now, the whole country is getting blasted by the heat waves now, except parts of Jeju. Now, without a doubt, the warnings will stay on for tomorrow, and in fact, they won't be lifted anytime soon. Now, Seoul and Gangneung had the hottest nights in 111 years this week. Now, they'll be a bit cooler tonight, but it'll still be above the standard temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. That's considered to be a tropical night. And by the morning tomorrow in Seoul, we'll be at 26 degrees. Now, looking at the daytime highs, tomorrow Seoul will be hitting off to 36, Daegu at 37, and Busan at 34 degrees. Now, again, through this week, there's no rain to look forward to, just intense heat throughout the rest of this week. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's it from us tonight, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thank you for watching.